So good morning and good evening everyone. So in this session, we are going to discuss what are the Java concepts required for performance testing units, right? What are the Java concepts that we need to know as a performance testing unit? So knowing Java concepts is important for performance testing units because 90% of the applications that we will do performance testing will be Java applications, right? So interviewers expect or we are supposed to learn some few basic concepts of Java, and JVM tuning and all. So which I am going to cover. I'll try to cover address in this session, right? So this is you should be knowing this is Java's logo, and these are the course contents that I'm going to cover in this series, right? So he's the founder of Java. James Gosling is the founder of Java. So Java was developed by James Gosling and first released by Sun Microsystems in 1995. And it's in Java, as you know, you may be knowing, it is a object-oriented programming language, and there are more than 3 billion programs, that will be using Java, right? And Java application support write once, run anywhere paradigm, right? So let's understand what is this write once, run anywhere paradigm means. So no matter in which operating system you have developed Java code, so you can run the same Java code in any operating system. So suppose you developed a Java program in Windows, or you did a project in Windows operating system. So you can run the same program, same code in any operating system, right? Whether it is Mac OS or Linux, right? So you can run it. So Java is platform independent, which is the first and foremost important feature of Java, which made it so successful, isn't it? Java is platform independent, right? So and this write once, run anywhere, refers to that platform independence feature of Java. Is it clear, guys? And these are the any queries? So so I'm taking your silence as now. So these are the core components of Java. So the core components of Java are JDK, JRE, and JVM. So we should know these. What is the difference between JDK, what is JRE, and what is the difference between each of them, right? So JDK stands for Java Development Kit, right? JDK stands for Java Development Kit and is a core component of Java environment. So if you want to compile some code, write and compile some code, and we need this JDK, right? If you want to write and compile some code, then only we need this JDK, guys, right? So JDK provides all the tools, executables, and binaries required to compile, debug, and execute a Java program, right? Whereas if you just need to execute a Java program, right? So JRE is enough. JRE is the implementation of JVM. JRE stands for Java Runtime Environment, right? So JRE stands for Runtime Environment. So you should know at least the difference between JDK and JRE, everyone, right? So when you install Java, right, generally you will get the JRE. However, you need to, if you want to compile some code, right? So you should have JDK also. So let me show you the folder structure of JDK and JRE. So here I have only JRE. Okay. Does anyone have JDK also? Okay, I think I don't have it on this machine. Right. So this is the folder structure for JRE, guys. So right, and JRE stands for Java Runtime Environment, and this is the version. So this is Java 8. The version that I am having is Java 8. So 1.8 is there, right? So that represents the Java version. So 1.7 is Java 7, 1.8 is Java 8, and so on. Right. So in JRE, you have bin folder where you have a lot of executables and DLL files, right? So exes and executable files and so on, isn't it? Right. So coming to JDK, right, I have it over here. I have JDK 8, Java Development Kit 8, and here you will have along with the JRE, you see here, right, in JDK we have JRE, right? So if you want to write any compile any Java program, like we need this JDK basically. So when you install JDK, like we are getting this JRE also in that. Okay. So let me go back to the PPT, to the slide deck, right? So however, if you want to run on any Java program, say for example, if you want to execute or if you want to use JMeter, right, which is a Java program, right, we just need JRE only. We need not have JDK. JDK is not mandatory. It is required only when you need to compile any script, compile any Java program. Is it clear, guys? Compile or debug any Java program. However, if you want to execute a Java program, JRE is enough. And JRE consists of JVM, Java binaries, and other classes to execute any Java program successfully. If you want to execute or if you want to run any Java program, JRE is enough, good enough, right? And now let us understand what is JVM. So JVM is the heart of the Java programming language. So when you run a Java program, JVM is actually responsible for converting bytecode to the machine code, right? So, and please observe here, JVM is platform dependent. So this is not platform independent. That means you will have a different JVM for Windows, different JVM for Linux, and different JVM for Mac OS, right? So that's what I mean to say when I say Java JVM is platform dependent. Here, right? And JVM provides the core Java functions like memory management, garbage collection, security, etc. So basically, JVM is responsible. What is the job of JVM? JVM, when you run any Java program, so JVM is responsible for converting bytecode into machine-specific code. Bytecode into machine-specific code. Okay. So you just need to know that JVM is platform dependent. That's it. Okay. And you need to know the difference between JDK and JRE as a performance test engineer. You need not know all these all these core functions like memory management, garbage. Not mandatory though, but these are the core components of Java: JDK, JRE, and JVM. Right? So any queries before moving to the next slide? Okay. So this is getting started with Java. Suppose so if you want to write some Java programs, right? So what you can do is you can download and install either 32-bit or 64-bit. You can download it from java.com, and you have to set Java path variable and class path variable, and you can use some editor like Notepad++, or you can use some any IDE like Eclipse or IntelliJ. So these are the editors. These are the IDEs, Integrated Development Environment. IDE stands for Integrated Development Environment, and Eclipse is more popular, and apart from that, IntelliJ also another popular IDE for Java. All right. So let me show you so how to download 32-bit and 64-bit Java. So you can type like this. So first of all, let me show you which Java version I have on my machine. So you know this command, right, everyone? What is the command to check the Java version, guys? Guys, are you able to hear me?
Version.
Java space -version. So that will show you the Java version on your machine, right? And you see here, if it is 60, if you see this 64-bit server VM, that means I have 64-bit Java on my machine, right? So for 32-bit, you will not see this. You will not see anything, on this, you will not see anything over here. You will not see that 32-bit like that. Right? So, but for 64-bit Java, you will see this. You will see this it will indicate that it is 64-bit Java. Is it clear, guys?
Yes.
Right. Now if you want to download 64-bit Java, just Google for download 64-bit Java. Alright. You go to java.com, and here you can see here you can see Windows Offline 64-bit, right? So this is 64-bit Java. You can download it, you can download this one for Windows. Mac OS, you can download this one, right? And and so on. Here. Next. So this is a sample Java program for writing Fibonacci series, right? Suppose you want to compile this, if you want to compile this code, right? So how you can do that is you go to, you can open a command prompt here, type a right? You can open a command prompt here and you type Java Fibonacci.java, Java C Fibonacci.java. So this is how you compile a Java class. Java C stands for Java compiler. Java C Fibonacci.java, right? It will so basically when you execute this command, it will create a class file. It will create a class file with the same name, Fibonacci.class, right? Here you can see, right? 26.9 here you can see the class. This class file is created just now, isn't it? Fibonacci.class is created. Now if you want to run this Java program, type Fibonacci, right? Java Fibonacci. Right. Now you can see this is how we run a Java program, Java Fibonacci, and it is displaying you the Fibonacci series, the first 10 numbers of Fibonacci series. I hope you know what is Fibonacci series. Everyone? Yes, these are some, if someone expect you to be to have some basic knowledge of Java, they will ask these programs this, by the way. These are simple Java programs. Like Fibonacci series means every number is a sum of the previous last two numbers. So if you see, if you observe Fibonacci series, if you take them from here, right, or if you take from here, so this is the sum of the previous last two numbers. And again, if you take this number 2, this is nothing but the sum of these last two numbers. Again, number 3, this is sum of last two numbers, right? Again, 2 plus 3, that is 5, 3 plus 5, 8, 5 plus 8, 13, and 8 plus 13, 21, and so on. Okay. You should know at least what is Fibonacci series. You remember, we came across that in our college. Sir, no. In our beta currency, we might have come across that. Right. So basically, you have to know at least what is Fibonacci series. If you don't know, how to write a program, at least you should know how to, compile a Java class and how to execute a Java class, right? That is the basic knowledge that that is expected from a performance testing way. Because most of the applications that we do performance testing will be Java application. So some basic knowledge in Java is expected. It would be added advantage for anyone. Okay. So this is how we can compile a class. How to compile a class? So we can use Java C and give the Java class name. And if you want to run a Java class, this is how we can execute it. Just type Java Fibonacci. Right? When we compile a Java program, it will create a class file. I have shown it just now. This class file is created just now. Right? And if you want to execute the Java class, this is the command, Java Fibonacci. Java space, give the Java program name. Okay. Right. So you can, so if you want, by the way, if you want to execute the program and all, right, you may need to set the Java class, Java path and class path variable. So let me show you, path variable and class path variable that I have already set long time back. Let me show you, where we can set this, right? At least let me show you where can we set this. So if you go to Windows search box and type, environment variables, right? If you type environment variables, you will get to see this window. Click on this and you will get this, click on this environment variable here. And you can see here, this is the Java home. Java home means where I have my JDK, that is called as Java home, Java_home. And so if you want to add some new property, click on add and give the variable name and value. So this is how I added this Java_home, and this is path variable, by the way, right? And one more thing, you have user variables and system variables. You should know at least difference between what is this user variable and system variable. So when you define some variable in this user variable section, So that is applicable for only this user called Pawan, right? Right now I am logged in with my username called Pawan. So we can, on Windows or any operating system, we can create multiple user profiles, right? I hope everyone knows that, right? We can create multiple user accounts. Yes, so, multiple user profiles, right? So if you set some variable in the user variable section, this will be applicable to only that particular user. However, if you set some variable in the system variables, right? You are setting that variable, you are defining that variable at the system level. Means these variables will be applicable for any user. So that is the difference between user variables and system variables. Another important Windows basic concepts that everyone should know. Okay. So here also you can see that you have that path variable over here and Java home variable also here, right? So so see, path is nothing but we are telling our machine where where these particular programs are. For example, let me show you the Java path. Okay, so if you see here, let me first show you Java home variable. What is the purpose of these variables? We are telling the system that we have JDK at this path. C program files Java JDK. We are telling that Java is available at this path, right? That is Java home. And coming to this path variable, right? In that hold on. So in that JDK, right? In that JDK, actually let me show you that JDK folder. That's what we have in JDK. So in that JDK, you have this bin folder. In bin folder, bin for binaries. In binary folder, we have all the executables. If you observe here, java.exe. This is required if you want to run a Java program, right? See, when I use Java Fibonacci, that means I am using this executable, java.exe. I am using this executable here, right? Now, in the path variable, what we are giving is, we are giving we have to give till the bin folder. Okay, so in the path variable, what you are giving here, %Java home %/bin means what it will do is, first it will take Java home. What is the path of Java home? So it will take till here. Next it will refer to the path variable, and in path variable we added bin, right? Then it will find that Java in that bin folder. Right, so these are the naming conventions. These are the standard conventions that we follow. So that what happens is, tomorrow if your Java version changes, right, you need not disturb the path variable. So you should get a query like why we need to use Java home and path separately, isn't it? We can give bin here directly, isn't it? Why not give the bin folder also here? But why are we defining Java home and path separately, right? So main intention in separating this is, suppose if you update your Java tomorrow, right? So you can change it here. You can simply change it here. Okay. So you need not disturb the path variable, because when you path variable contains a lot of important entries. So you need not, without opening or without editing path variable, you can update your Java version here. Is it clear, guys? Or any confusion?
Yes, sir.
Yes, are you able to follow?
Yes, sir.
You got it, right? If tomorrow if you update Java, right, you can simply change the Java home variable. That's it. You need not disturb that path variable. So path variable contains some default values as well. Let me show you that. So when you install Oracle, you will get some entries made into the path variable and so on. Whenever you install any program, right, some entries will be made to this path variable. See, for example, when I install Strawberry Pearl, this was I got this entry into this, right? And whenever you install any program, the path variable will be automatically updated. You see here, right? Putty, when I install Putty, this entry got added like that. Maven home, you see a lot of entries over here, right? So and also you see one corresponding entry for load runner also. See here, program files x86 micro focus load runner. Some entry got added automatically when you install load runner. This this value got added automatically. So just to not make any change in the path variable, right? So this Java home will be defined till JDK, and then the bin folder will be given in this path variable. Okay, So at least you may not be in a stage to do this. You may not be required to do this, but you should know at least what is user variable, what is system variable, what is the difference between them, and like why do we need to define Java home and path separately, right? So this is what, when I say Java path, set Java path variable, this is what I want to say. I want to that's what it means, like setting the Java path means. Setting Java path means nothing but we are telling our system where our Java is, where Java is installed on our machine, or path of Java. That's it. Okay. When you say set Java path variable, right? So next, coming to like these are just some basics of Java. So in Java we have class. Class is nothing but a basic unit of code, and it describes data and logic of your program. Just need to know basic definitions. What is class? What is package? Right? So basic unit of code is called as called as a Java class. Right? A basic unit of code or a basic program. One program is called as a Java program. Right? And in called as a Java class. Sorry. One Java program is called as a Java class. And package is nothing but group of Java classes. Group of Java classes is called as a package, right? And the format will be something like this: form.company name. So like when the Java developer is writing some program, say for example, like some developer is writing a developing a program or working on a project in TCS. So they follow this naming convention. They give the package structure like this: form.tcs. something like this. Okay. So they will give the company name over here, the company name. Got it? This is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Right? So this is package structure. This is the package structure. Package format will be like this. And module is nothing but group of packages. Okay. A module is nothing but a group of packages. These are simple, Java terminology, Java basic terminology that would, if you know, that will be good. So generally, like in the interviews, like if they expect some Java knowledge, right? So they will be expecting these terms, like what is meant by what is JDK, what is JRE, and what is a class, what is package, what is a module, and so on. That's the reason I have included these terms out here. Right? When they expect like you need to know some Java basic knowledge. So this is what they expect. These are few things that they will expect. Right? So and coming to Java classes and object. So a class represents a type of a thing or a concept, right? And object is an instance of a class. Just remember this, okay. So let me tell you something. Let me give you some example. Okay, of this Java class, right? For example, suppose you have an employee class. Okay, else let me Google for some sample code. Java employee class program, right? So it will look something like this. Let me search for some sample Java class. For example, there is a Java class called employee details.java. So basically what it contains is class employee details, class name. This is the class name, and it will have what are the attributes of that, or what are the properties of that employee class. Any employee will have employee ID and salary, and name, address, department, email, and so on. Right? These are the different data types in Java. In testing, these are all different data types in Java. So we have different data types in Java. So these are the different data types. These are the different, there are 8 types of primitive data types: Boolean, byte, char, short, int. Now you need not remember all this, don't worry about this, but I just want to give you some basic idea. So this is how an employee class looks like. Say for example, this is how an employee details class looks like. So this is the class name, class followed by class name. This is the class name. See, you see the package structure, see here. So the package structure, like it will be something like this: Java tPoint.java object to JSON. They have defined the package structure like this, right? But mostly they will give like this form.java tPoint, something like that. It will be something like that, right? So mostly like they will follow this package structure. Most of the companies follow this package structure, like com dot company name and so company name dot will have the class name, something like this, right? Now, so if you observe here, these are called as methods, Java methods, public int get temp id. So how to identify class and method? Java class and a Java method is Java class starts with capital letter, and whereas method name starts with a small letter, and the next word will start with a capital letter, right? Java method starts with a small letter, and then the next word in that method name, right? So it will start with the capital letter. So based on that, you can identify that this is a method and this is the class name. Java class name always starts with a capital letter, right? This is standard naming convention, so which is strictly followed by any developer, any Java developer. Okay. Yeah, and if you want to, so a class represents a type of a thing or a concept. So what this employee details class is representing? It is representing an employee details of an employee, right? So so a class represents a type of a thing or a concept. And what is an object? Object means instance of a class. Instance of a class means, suppose you want to create an object of this class, right? So how we do is this is the class name, right? And class employee details. How an object can be created is, so if you someone want to create someone want to create an object, right? So how they will give is, they give the class name. Let me copy the class name, right? So employee details some e. So means this is class name and this is object. Okay, and we use a keyword called new. Employee e is equal to new, and we'll use like this. This is how an object will be created. New employee details, right? This is how an object, Java object, will be created. So we are using new keyword to create an object for this Java class, right? If you understand well and good, otherwise no problem. But you should know at least what is a Java class and what is an object. Okay, so if you understand well and good, otherwise not an issue, not important for us. But but if some interviewer asks Java knowledge, right? If the JD mentions that you need to know basic knowledge of Java, so these are the concepts that you need to know, right? And in this slide deck I covered how to set Java path in Windows and Linux. Okay, and this is how we can set temporarily. We can set the path temporarily also by using this command, by using this set path is equal to command, or else we can change it in environment variables. This is how we can change it in environment variables. And in Linux, these are the commands to set the Java path. Okay, so and the next concept you need to know is, this is not required, this is required for developers. You can ignore this slide deck. And yeah, so next very important concept that we should know as a performance test engineer is what is meant by a Java heap, right? So as I mentioned here, a Java heap is nothing but the amount of memory allocated to the applications running in the JVM. The amount of memory allocated for an application is called as Java heap. As simple as that is. The amount of memory allocated for a Java application is called as Java heap. Suppose, let me give some examples here, okay? So when you install JMeter, right? Everyone install JMeter, right? You worked on JMeter, for quite some long time, right? So when you start JMeter, right? So if you observe here the JMeter console, let it come up. So by default, 1 GB of memory will be allocated for for the JMeter. So JMeter is, we all know that JMeter is a Java program, isn't it? JMeter is developed in Java. JMeter is Java program, right? Yes. So if you want to run JMeter, we have to install Java. You remember that, right, everyone? So if you go to Apache JMeter website, right? Right? So here it will be clearly mentioned download releases, right? So here I can see this is the latest version of JMeter, and it requires Java 8+. That means you need a JRE, at least you need JRE, okay, to run, to use this JMeter, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
We should install Java and then only we can run this JMeter, right? So, and if you observe this JMeter console, right, you see here, right? You see something here, modify current environment variable heap is equal to, right? So what is heap here? What is meant by heap? Out of the total memory that is available on my system, right? What is the total memory available on my, let me show you. See, this is the total memory available on my system, 16 GB of RAM. My system has 16 GB of RAM. Out of this total RAM, right, 1 GB of memory will be allocated for JMeter. Okay, 1 GB of memory will be allocated for JMeter by default. So what is heap here? What is meant by heap here? Heap is the amount of memory allocated for this Java program, right? Amount of memory allocated for any Java program, that is called as Java heap. Is it clear, guys?
Yes.
Right? And you see some environment where you see some heap settings here. These are called as heap settings, right? So -xms1g, -xmx1g means this refers to the minimum heap size. This refers to max heap size, right? This refers to the min. Of course, here this is a best practice actually. That that minimum heap size and max heap size should be same. This is the one of the Java best practices. So, but what does this XMS refers is? This is minimum heap size. This is max heap size, and this is max meta space. We'll see what is this max meta space. In the next few minutes, right? And like this should be max meta space should be 25% of the total heap size. This is one thumb rule, right? This is one thumb rule that max meta space should be 25% of the total heap size. Remember this. You can note it down if you are taking running notes. Max meta space size should be 25% of the total heap space, right? This is 25% only, right? 256 M means 256 MB, right? This is nothing but 25% of 1 GB. 1 GB equal to like 1024 MB, isn't it? GB is equal to 1024 MB, isn't it? So 25% of this comes to 256 MB. So these are the this is one recommendation by Java that meta space should be 25% of the total heap space. Right. So what does it essentially mean? So when you define this heap setting as 1 GB, so out of the total available RAM, JMeter can use 1 GB of RAM, right? Max 1 GB of RAM. So if you are running a load test with some 1,000 users, 2,000 users, or 3,000 users. Suppose if this 1 GB is not sufficient, you will see out of memory exceptions in the JMeter log. You will see out of memory exceptions in the JMeter log, and you can increase the heap size. You can increase the memory allocated for the Java program, right? However, there is a recommendation that like you should not allocate the heap memory allocation for a single program. It should be 1/16 of the total RAM, 1/16 or 1/8 of the total RAM. So you cannot increase, so just because you can increase Java heap setting, you cannot make it some 4 GB or 8 GB directly. Okay, so it should be 1/16 or 1/8 something. I think it's 1/16. You cannot, you should not increase, as per your wish. I'll explain why we should not increase, even though we have enough RAM. Why shouldn't we increase it to 4 GB or 8 GB? I'll explain that in the next few minutes. Okay. So in the same way, when when you are working on any Java application, right? So it will have some heap setting. It will have some heap setting, and some amount of memory will be allocated for the Java application. Suppose you are testing a Java application, so that will be having some heap memory defined, heap setting defined somewhere in the configuration files. Okay. So, and you have to be aware that if you see out of memory exceptions for that application, one way to sort out that out of memory exceptions is to increase the heap size. At the same time, you should not increase heap size drastically. You should not increase from 1 GB directly to some 3 GB or 4 GB like that. So if you increase directly, what happens is, GC takes more time, garbage collection takes more time. So I'll explain what is garbage collection and so on, why we should not increase, if even though we have enough memory available, why shouldn't we increase, heap memory? I'll explain in next few minutes. I'll take a pause here. So any queries? And observe here one more thing. Modify current environment variable heap is equal to XMS1G blah 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 in the JMeter batch file. So where we can increase the heap sizes? Let me show. Go to JMeter, JMeter folder. Let me show you the corresponding heap setting. Okay. So I have JMeter 5.4.1. Second is this is the shortcut. Open file location, and you see JMeter.batch file. See, this is what they are referring to when they say JMeter batch file. This is the file that they are referring to, JMeter.batch, right? So if you want to see the heap setting here, right? Heap setting, you can see it here. Function, right? So I can see it here, right? So set heap is equal to, so this is where those heap settings are defined. So if you want to increase, right, you can give 1 and 1.5 GB, or you can give 1500 MB like that, right? Or if you want to increase to 2 GB, you can change it here from 1 GB to 2 GB, right? So if it is mandatory, if your JMeter heap memory is not sufficient, the default memory is not sufficient, then only you need to change this. And this is how we change it. We can XMS, I already mentioned XMS is minimum heap size, XMX is max heap size, and max meta. So when you increase this heap size, right, you have to do the corresponding change in the meta space also. Means you need to increase this one also. Suppose, say for example, you increase this to 2 GB, right? Min and max heap size, you increase to 2 GB. Then you have to make this as 512. Got it? 512 M. Clear, guys?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Right? And if you see here, GC algorithm. So what is the GC algorithm that JMeter uses is G1GC. See here, this is where GC algorithm is defined. GC stands for garbage collection. I will be explaining in few minutes like what is garbage collection and so on. Right? So, but for now, remember that JMeter uses this garbage collection algorithm, GC algorithm called G1GC, and max GC pass. We will come back to this file, okay? We will come back to this file very soon. Okay. So let me close that. Yes. Now.
Kishore, మనం అప్లికేషన్స్ సార్ మరి డిస్ట్రిబ్యూట్ టెస్టింగ్ చేస్తాం కదా, అక్కడ హీప్ సైజ్ ఇష్యూ ఏమి ఉండదా సర్వర్స్ లో?
No, can you come again? Come again.
We will do the remote testing, right? So there we will run scripts from different slave machines. We don't find any heap issues there.
No, if you see, by default 1 GB of memory will be allocated. So if you are putting more number of users, if you are if you want to run more number of users from a single machine, right? You may, if you see out of memory exceptions, you can increase that JMeter heap size on each machine.
Okay.
Okay, so there are some just best practices for JMeter. You have to first follow that. Still, if you are getting those, like let me bring up that, JMeter best practices. So you have to disable all the listeners before starting a test. I covered some best practices in JMeter, right? So let me bring up that, right? So you have to disable all the listeners. And like you have to follow some best practices like that. So here also, like whenever you launch JMeter, right? So you can see the best practices over here. It will show the URL here, right? JMeter best practices. You can check it here as well. Right. So always use latest version of JMeter. Use correct number of threads. Correct number of threads means you have to determine how many users can a single machine support, right? So you have to find out like how much memory each user will take, right? And based on that, you have to use, like you have to load that. I mean, you should run correct number of users from a machine, right? And you have to, there are a few other best practices like, so here you can see, this is one of the best practices. You have to run in command line mode for them, when you're running a test in JMeter. Use as few listeners as possible. And if you have listeners, if using -L flag, they all can be deleted or disabled. You have to use, when you're running a test in non-JM mode, you have to use this flag. -L means it will disable the listeners, right? And don't use view results tree or view results in table listeners during the load test, right? So you should not use this view results tree or view results in table because they consume a lot of CPU and memory, right? So these are the best practices that you need to follow, must and should, when you are running using JMeter. Still, if you are getting out of memory exceptions, even after following all these, if you are getting out of memory exceptions, you may need to increase the heap memory for JMeter on that machine, on each slave machine, or master machine. And also use CSV output rather than XML. Only save the data that you need. Sometimes we log some data, right? Log.info, by using log.info, we'll save some data. So, like you only save the data that you need, right? So, we should be conscious of this, like use as few assertions as possible. Some people have a habit of using multiple assertions for a single request, for a single transaction. Some people have a habit of using multiple assertions. So we should not use the multiple assertions. We have to use very few assertions as possible, And when you are writing some custom code, you have to use the JSR223 sampler. You have to use JSR223. That is the most performance scripting language, right? So these are the best practices for JMeter. Even after you are following all these best practices, if you are seeing out of memory exceptions, that means the heap memory is not sufficient for that particular load on the machine, right? Then you can increase the heap memory setting for JMeter on each machine. At the same time, you should not increase directly from 1 GB to 2 GB like that. You can increase by 500 MB like that, right? You can increase by 500 MB and see if that is sufficient. If it is still not sufficient, you can increase to 2 GB, right? So what happens if we increase, if we directly increase from 1 GB to 2 GB or 3 or 4 GB, right? So, your garbage collection, that will put a lot, that will impact your garbage collection time. So we'll see what is garbage collection time. First, is this clear what is meant by a Java heap?
Yes.
Amount of memory, you have to remember this definition, okay? Java heap is the amount of memory allocated for any application, any Java application, right? And what is garbage collection? Garbage collection refers to the automatic process of managing the runtime memory. So this is a standard definition. Let me explain what is garbage collection. So here we discussed now, right? We are creating one. This is how we create an object. Suppose you are using some Java application, and like you are entering the employee details. For example, HR is filling the employee details, and HR is filling the employee details in their internal website. You have some intranet applications, right, which are used within the organization, right? Or else web application also. If some HR person or some other person is employing employee details, right? Basically, what happens is an employee object will be created in the back end on the Java side, and this employee object will be holding all the employee details till you submit the form. Understood or no? Right? Suppose there is a HTML form for filling the employee details, right? And HR is filling HR should fill the employee details in their application, in their HR application, right? So in the backend, what happens is suppose they are filling the details like this. They have the form like this. Assume that this is a Java application, and they're filling the employee details like this: name, birth date, address, and so on, right? So in the backend, right, in the how Java code will be is employee details, there will be a class called employee details or employee, and developer will write code like this: employee small e is equal to new employee details. Means a new object will be created for this Java class, and all the details, right, first name, last name, address and all will be stored in this employee object, right? In this employee object, they can define like this, developer can write employee details emp, something like this, right? So this object will be holding all the employee details, right, till they submit the form, right? That object will be holding all the details. Once the form is submitted, once the form is all the details are filled and submit button is clicked, right, then all the data will be stored in the database. Is it clear, guys? And whenever this employee object is created, right, there will be multiple other objects also created. One object for name, one object for date, one object for address, and so on, right? So see, name will be a string object, and phone number will be an integer object, right? Yes or no? Java,
Yes.
we have different types, right? Char, these are the different data types. Char for character, right? Int for suppose employee phone number field is there, that will be defined as an integer object, right? So whenever an employee object is created, right, different objects will be created for this character, string object, and so on. Is it clear or confusing?
Sir.
Let me show you some code, otherwise then you will get a clear understanding, because you should know what is Java object, basically what is Java object, what is this heaps Java object cycle, and so on. So if you see here, these are the different these different objects will be created, guys. So these are the different data types, right? These are the different data types: employee ID, salary, string name. So name is defined as a string, address is also defined as a string. In the same way, department is also defined as a string, email is also defined as a string. So you'll have integer objects, string objects, and so on. So when when an employee object is created, all these objects will be created: employee ID and salary and so on, right? And all these objects will be stored in the Java heap. All these objects will be stored in the Java heap. Okay, so hold on. So this is the heap architecture, Java heap architecture, right? That means suppose Java, suppose 1 GB of memory is allocated for JMeter. For example, JMeter is a Java application. We know that, right? So 1 GB is allocated for JMeter. This 1 GB will be divided like this. That 1 GB of memory will be that heap memory will be having these different different partitions, right? So called young generation, old generation, perm gen, right? And please note that this heap architecture is till Java 7. From Java 8 onwards, there is a small difference. We discussed that, but basically this is the high level architecture of a Java heap, right? And this is the detailed diagram. So let's not see, this is required for developers. Let's not go for that. In some interviews, for performance testing interviews, they will ask you, can you draw me the heap architecture, right? This is a simple diagram that you can draw and show them. This will be you need not know these much details. These are for developers, but this is a simple diagram that you can draw and show them, right? So basically, Java heap architecture, like you can represent in this way. So it consists of 3 partitions, like young generation, old generation, permanent generation. So now let us see what is this young generation, old generation, permanent generation, right? So I gave the definition here. Young generation is divided into 3 spaces called 1 Eden space and 2 survivor spaces, right? And all objects are first defined in Eden space. What is meant by object here? What is meant by object creation? Suppose HR person is filling in employee details, some employee details, right? I just now told you, right? So one employee object will be created. That employee object will be created first in Eden space. That's what you need to know. Is it clear, guys?
Yes.
That employee object will be, all those objects will be created. See, in that way, multiple users, thousands of users will be using that application, right? So for every user, accessing application, some multiple objects will be created, and all those objects will be first created in Eden space, right? Means you understood, right? This 1 GB will be, this 1 GB of RAM that is allocated for Java program here, right? Or else, suppose, let me have one Java, Java application on my machine, set up on my machine. Okay, let me start that. Right, this is Conacut application that I have installed on my machine, that is running on my machine, and let the application come in. This is Tomcat. This is hosted on Tomcat server, Tomcat application server, and let it come in. Yeah. So see here, this is the admin page that is coming up. So admin page will be, see, this is admin page that came up. So there will be a Java class called Conacut admin, right? So when you are accessing this page, right, one object will be created for that Java class called Conacut admin. And when you submit the username and password, right, that will be stored in one object will be created, and all the objects, that object will be stored in, will be created in the Eden space first. Here, that will be created in Eden space. So all the Java objects, whenever some Java objects are created, they will be first, created in this Eden space. When I say all objects are first created, whenever you are using any Java application, say for example, this is one Java class that will be running in the background, or this is one Java class that will be running in the background. This welcome.action. This is one Java class that will be running. So one object will be created for this class when you are using that application. So in this way, when thousands of users are accessing the application, thousands of objects will be created, obviously. Yes or no? Eventually, when each user is using an application, right, some objects will be created. Some objects of that class will be created. Understood or no?
Yes, sir.
Right? So, and all these objects will be created first in the Eden space. Right? All the objects will be first created in the Eden space. And
the object and the details.
What is that?
Object and మనం ఇచ్చే details కదా.
So details కాదు. So what happens is when you are submitting the form, right, how it could be. Let me take this Java class example. Let me show you. Okay. So see here. So here this is the object name, employee. See, I gave the same example, right? Employee details emp is equal to new employee details, means one employee object will be created. One employee object is created, and suppose HR enter the employee ID as 101. Then what happens is the object. See, this is object name dot method name, means set employee ID. Set employee ID means set employee ID as 101, right? And when we are filling the form in the front end, right, these objects will be storing this data like this. Employee ID will be stored like this by using this method, and name will be stored like this by using, in the same employee object, the name will be stored like this. Till we submit the form, it will that object will be holding your data. You got it?
Yes, sir.
Right? So you got it, right? So so any object will be holding those details like employee ID, employee name, and so on. Whatever data we are entering, that data will be stored in that employee object, right? So when this object is created, right, that will be first created in this. It will be first created in this Eden space, right? And once Eden space is full, right, an NGC will be triggered. Eng garbage collection. So why this is called as Eng garbage collection means the garbage collection which happens in Eng generation, that is called as NGC, right? NGC will be triggered whenever Eden space fills up, right? So after some time this space will be, see, for example, 1 GB of memory will be allocated. For example, let's assume that 1 GB of memory is allocated for this any Java application, right? That 1 GB will be split between this, between these generations like this. Okay, that 1 GB of memory, the composition will be like this, something like this. Okay, we already discussed that permanent generation or max meta space should be 25% of the total heap space. Now, you know, like how much memory will be split is out of 1 GB, out of total, suppose if you are allocating heap size as, setting heap size as 1 GB, right? This 1 GB, how it will be allocated is 25% will be allocated for this PermGen. That means, hold on, N generation, old generation, and you know, PermGen, right? Or you know, from Java 8 onwards, this was replaced by Metaspace. This permanent generation was replaced by something called Metaspace. I explained it here in this diagram, right? PermGen space was deleted and it was replaced by Metaspace from Java 8 onwards. Right? This is the difference, you know, there is a difference in the heap. I told you, right? There is a small change in the heap architecture from Java 8, right? So this is the change. Okay. So that's why I'm giving here, you know, like PermGen or Metaspace. Now this 1 GB, how it will be allocated is, first of all, PermGen, you know, requires 256 MB because the thumb rule is PermGen or Metaspace should be 25% of the total space. And you know, old generation, some, you know, like it will be 512 MB will be allocated for this old generation, right? And you know, for N generation, like, you know, 256 MB will be allocated for N generation. So this is how 1 GB of memory will be split between these, you know, these three different you know, partitions. Clear? Is it clear, guys? And once, you know, like once this N generation is full, right? So for example, again we have in N generation we have hidden space and survivor space. Okay, so as these objects are getting created, as and when users are using, more and more users are using the application, right? Java application. So at some point this hidden space gets fill up, right? This hidden space gets fills up, and then something called NGC will be triggered. Why it is called NGC means the garbage collection which is, you know, happening in N generation space, that is called as NGC. That will be triggered. What is the purpose of that? What it will do is, it will see, you know, like it will see if there are any objects which are not having any references, which are, you know, what happens when a garbage collection happens is basically, so it will scan that area and it will identify, like, you know, live objects and, you know, objects which are not in use, right? Objects not referenced anymore are collected and rest are survivors. Means objects not referenced anymore means if the object, you know, if, see, for example, we used some Java application, we filled a form and we submitted that, right? That employee object or that object is no longer in use, right? So all those objects which are not in use, they will be collected. They will be collected means they will be collected and they will be cleared off from the hidden space. They will be removed from the hidden space which are not in usage, right? And objects which are still in usage, right, they are survivors. They will be moved to the survivor space. Objects which are still in use, they will be moved to S0, S1, right? S0 and S1 are survivor spaces, and they are identical, and one space will be always empty, right? Whenever a NGC happens, garbage collection happens, right? See, you remember in this way, garbage collection means, you know, garbage, you know the term garbage, right? What is meant by garbage? Which is no longer used, which is not required, that we call that as garbage. And we will throw that garbage, right? So in the same way, objects which are not in use will be removed from this heap. And, you know, objects which are still in use, right, they will be moved to survivor space. First they will be moved to S0. Once S0 is full, then again, whenever garbage collection happens, right, you know, again, unwanted objects will be removed, and objects which are still in use, they will be moved to S1. So S0 and S1 are identical, and, you know, one space will be always empty. One survivor space will be always empty, right? So this is about NGC, garbage collection happening in N generation. And this NGC, this is also called as minor GC, by the way. right? This minor GC, should happen in milliseconds. Okay, so is it clear, guys? And suppose assume that if this Eden space is full, S0 S1 is also full, and after some 16 GC cycles, I think there is a threshold value of 16. Means if an object survives 16 GC cycles, means if an object is in use still even after 16 GC cycles, then it will be promoted to old generation. That object will be moved to the old generation. This is called as object promotion. Okay, the old generation is also called as tenured space. Eden space, survivor space, tenured space, and permgen. These are called as Eden space, tenured space or old generation, and permanent generation. Perm, or this is also called as perm space, permgen space. Is it clear or confusing, or
clear?
You should know what is object, what are these objects and all, First you should understand what is object, when an object will be created. As I explained here, suppose you are using some so when you are using this form, right, when this form is accessed, right, one Java object will be created for this class called welcome. Okay, so the Java developer might have written a code, Java class called welcome. So that welcome class, one object will be created for that welcome class. In the same way here, a developer might have written one class for Ponakat admin, right? Now when you access this URL, right, one object will be created for that Java class called Ponakat admin. You got it? So all these objects, in this way there will be thousands of users accessing the application, right? Any application, hundreds and thousands of users will be accessing, right? So eventually hundreds and thousands of objects will be created, and all those objects will be first created in heap space, this Eden space, and then whenever that form is, suppose the user closes that page, say for example, I have visited this page, and I have visited this page and I have closed it, right? That object is no longer used now. That welcome object is no longer used now, right? And it should be garbage collected, it should be removed from the heap, right? And in Java, this memory management will be happening automatically. That is what automatic memory management means. This is what automatic memory management means. Automatic memory management means it is the process of recognizing when allocated objects are no longer needed and deallocating the memory used by such objects. That is called as freeing. Deallocating the memory used by such objects is called as freeing, and making the memory available for subsequent allocation. Means why that object should be created, because suppose a new user comes, right, one more new object should be created, and that requires some more memory, right? So for subsequent users, some objects should be created when some other users start using the application, right? So this memory management is done by in Java, this memory management is done automatically, whereas in C or C++, the memory management is done by programmer. Explicitly, they are done by programmer, right? So means they have to write some code to free the memory. If you have some programming background, right, you will understand this easily. Right? I know if you don't have any programming background, right? If you don't have any programming background in C, C++ or Java, this will be a bit difficult to understand. It will be some gray area for you. For anyone, right? It will be gray area for anyone if you don't have any basic knowledge on C++ or Java.
Ishwar, one more
At least
question.
to get a high level overview of what I am trying to explain. Yes, you are asking something.
సర్వైవల్ స్పేస్ నుంచి ఆబ్జెక్ట్స్ అనేవి ఓల్డ్ జనరేషన్ లోకి ఎంటర్ అవ్వడానికి ఇట్ యూజెస్ సేమ్ ఆబ్జెక్ట్స్, అంటే 16 సైకిల్స్ కంప్లీట్ అయిన తర్వాత వెళ్తుందా?
Yes. So if an object is still in usage and it survived 16 GC cycles, right, then it will get a promotion. I mean that it will be moving from one generation to old generation.
Okay. How we will know it is survived 16 cycles అని, అంటే ఎలా తెలుస్తుంది మనకి కౌంట్ అది?
No, that will be done automatically by Java.
Okay.
We need not do anything for that. Okay.
Okay.
So let me see the threshold cycle. I don't remember the exact number. Java GC threshold cycle. GC tenuring threshold. The current largest value is 65,000. I think it is 15. I think it's 15. GC threshold cycle, I think it is 15. Yeah. Tenuring threshold by value add.
సో మెటాస్పేస్ కి ఎప్పుడు 1 GB ఇంక్రీజ్
promoted from survivor to old space. Yeah, you are asking something?
మెటాస్పేస్ లో కూడా ఎప్పుడు కూడా మనము ఇప్పుడు హీప్ చేంజ్ చేసినప్పుడు మెటాస్పేస్ కూడా మీరు చేంజ్ చేయాలన్నారు కదా.
హీప్ ఇంక్రీజ్ చేసినప్పుడు whenever we increase heap memory, yes.
యా, అలాంటప్పుడు అంటే మెటాస్పేస్ కూడా సమ్ స్పేస్ అనేది క్రియేట్ చేస్తున్నాము మనం.
No, see, it will be automatically divided like that. When you allocate 1 GB, that will be automatically allocated like that. In that ratio. Yeah, 1:2:1 ratio, it will be automatically allocated.
Okay.
Okay, maybe there are some changes in the recent versions. Okay, so let it be. But what you have to understand is whenever that threshold limit reaches, right, then okay. Maybe that depends on the application. That will be defined by the developer based on the application, I think. So but you should know what is object promotion and how does an object promotion happens. When does an object move from young generation to old generation? You should know the concept that objects which survived some n number of GC cycles, they will be moved from young generation to old generation, right? So that's what you need to know, right? And whenever this old generation is, let's assume that after some time this young generation and old generation is full, right? Then again another GC happens, that is called as major GC. Right? And major GC should not take more than 1 second. That is a thumb rule. In 1 second, that major GC garbage collection should be completed. Right? So a minor GC should be completed in milliseconds and major GC should be completed in a second. Not more than, it should not be more than that. Okay? Because whenever a GC happens, whenever a major GC happens, your application stops, may stop responding. Based on the algorithm, your application may stop responding. So if GC itself take more than 2 seconds or 3 seconds, right, your response times will be obviously increasing. Your application response times will be eventually increasing, isn't it? See, you have to remember that whenever a GC happens, most of the times your application stops responding, right? If GC is taking 4 or 5 seconds, right, your response times will be a lot more. Yes or no? Because your application stops responding whenever major GC happens. Is it clear or no? So this major GC should not take more than a second. That is the thumb rule, right? So, and let us understand this young generation and old generation. I gave explanation there for young generation, and old generation is in the next slide, right? The objects that did not become unreachable and survived from the young generation are copied here, are copied to old generation. Here means to the old generation. Objects which did not become unreachable means some objects which are still in usage and survived from the young generation means survived the GC cycles, right? Which are still existing even after still in usage, they are copied to the old generation. Old generation size is generally larger than the young generation, and as it is bigger in size, the GC occurs less frequently than in the young generation. You got it right? This young generation will be generally larger than young generation. This old generation will be more than this young generation. That's why this will not fill very frequently. That's what I mentioned here. GC occurs less frequently than in young generation, right? And when objects disappear from the old generation, we say a major GC or full GC has occurred. Means if your old generation is also full, when does a major GC kicks off is whenever young GC and young generation and old generation is full, then a major GC happens. That is a major GC is also called as full GC. Why it is called full GC means this garbage collection happens in both young and old generation. You got it? That's why it is called as a full GC. Yes, is it clear or no? Are you able to follow or no? Or partially able to follow? Yes, please respond, guys.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yes, Kishore, you can follow.
Okay. And perm-gen. So the next partition is called as perm-gen, permanent generation. So this is also called as method area. So this is the area where the method and class objects are stored. This is the area where the method and class objects are stored. A GC that takes place here is also termed as major GC. A GC that took place here is also termed as major GC. Means whenever a major GC happens, this memory also will be garbage collected. Means it will check for garbage objects which are no longer used, and those objects will be removed from permanent generation space also whenever a major GC happens, right? So this is all about the heap architecture that you should know. Everyone should know as a performance test engineer. When you are testing a Java application, so you should know what is the heap size for that allocated for that application, and what is the GC algorithm that is being used, right? And how much time it is taking, that major GC is taking. You have to keep an eye on how much time that major GC is taking, right? Now, so let us understand this garbage collection in detail. Okay, so garbage collection is a Java program which tracks referenced objects, means live objects, and allow them to keep in the heap memory, whereas memory of unreferenced object is reclaimed and reused for future object allocation. Means, see, garbage collection is a Java program which tracks referenced objects, means live objects which are still in usage, and allow them to keep in the heap. It will leave them in the heap. It will not remove them, right? Whereas memory of unreferenced objects or dead objects is reclaimed and reused. Dead objects are removed and that memory will be reclaimed. Means they will occupy certain memory, right? That memory will be reclaimed and reused for future object allocation. Is it clear what is meant by garbage collection?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And main objective of garbage collector is to free heap memory by destroying unreachable objects. Unreachable objects means objects which are not in use. Simply removing unreachable objects, objects which are not in use, is called as garbage collection. That's it. Okay, that is the main objective of garbage collection. In C++, programmer is responsible for both creation and destruction of objects. Okay, if you don't know, see, basically, if you have some idea of C language, right? So, or else, in C language, C the developer will use a method called malloc. Malloc for memory allocation, right? Whenever you want to create an object, right? He will use this method called malloc, memory allocation. And once at the end of the program, they will write this free method, right? They will use this free method. At the beginning of the program, they will use this method for memory allocation. At the end of that program, right? They will use this free method. By using this free method, what they are doing is they are freeing that memory, right? So, but in Java, you don't need to, we are doing that, explicitly. The memory allocation is done explicitly in C or C++ languages. But in Java, you need not take care of that, this memory allocation or memory management will be done automatically, as I explained here. Explained in one of the previous slides, right? Automatic memory management will be done in Java. Okay, we need not take care of that memory management. Developer need not take care of that memory management, right? So that's what I mean to say here. In C or C++, programmer is responsible for both creation and destruction of objects. right? But in Java, developer need not care for all the objects which are no longer in use. Garbage collector destroys those objects. So occasionally this garbage collector runs and it will remove the unwanted objects which are not in use. And garbage collector is the best example for daemon thread. Daemon thread means low priority thread. Low priority thread, as it is always running in the background. It will be running, this garbage collector will be running in the background, and whenever that heap memory is full, whenever n generation is full, a minor GC happens, and whenever old generation is also full, then major GC happens. However, it will be running in the background as a daemon thread. Daemon thread means low priority thread, right? Daemon thread means low priority thread, and it will be always running in the background, right? And when will this GC run? So as a Java programmer, there is no way for you to know when the JVM would run the garbage collector. This is true even if you specify system.gc. If we want to call the garbage collection explicitly, we use this, developer can use this system.gc method, right? However, developer need not call it explicitly. Garbage collector will most probably run when memory runs low, means heap memory, whenever heap memory is getting full, then garbage collector will run, right? Or when the available memory is lesser than what your program needs. A heap memory, whenever that heap memory is getting full, or if the available memory is lesser than what your program needs, right? Then this garbage collector will be automatically running in the background, right? If the garbage collector does not free up enough memory resources, your program will get memory from your operating system, right? And unreachable objects. Unreachable objects means an object that is said to be unreachable if it does not contain any references. Means if it is no longer in use, that is called as an unreachable object, right? And like these are island of isolation and all. These are all not required for us, but there is a term called island of isolation. Objects which are part of island of isolation are also unreachable, right? So this is not required for us as a performance test engineer, but you should know you should understand what is a unreachable object and when does garbage collection happens, right? And what is garbage collection, when does garbage collection happens, and how does that happen, right? And now this is important for developers, not required for us. And now there are different types of garbage collections, right? So you might have, so for example, I have just shown you that JMeter uses G1GC, right? Let me show you one more time. Let me open that jmeter.pad file. So if you observe here, JMeter uses a garbage collection called G1GC, right? Here it's defined here, okay? So let's see here. So GC algorithm that JMeter is using this G1GC. So in this garbage when we say garbage collection happens in the background, right? There are different types of garbage collections, right? These are the different types of garbage collections: serial collector, parallel or throughput collector. CMS collector stands for concurrent mark and sweep. CMS stands for concurrent mark and sweep. Right? You just need to remember the names, okay? You need not know how they work and all. That is required for developers, okay? We need not know all the internal details, how it works. But we should know that, there are different types of garbage collectors, and we should know what are the different types of garbage collectors, okay? That's all, right? And what is the garbage collection algorithm that your application is using? Most of the developers also don't know, by the way, okay? Developers also don't know, most of the developers don't know what is the garbage collection that their application is using, okay? But as a performance test engineer, you should know at least what, when you have some performance issues, you should look into the GC algorithm, what GC algorithm is being used, and what is the best GC algorithm for that application. You got it? When you have 4 types of GC algorithms, right? So this is suitable for, the serial collector is suitable for desktop applications, right? This is suitable for thick client applications or desktop applications. So you should know, you should be having an idea like which GC algorithm is suitable for what type of application. Is it clear, guys? First thing is you should know what is garbage collection, what is object, what is Java heap, and what are the different garbage collectors available, right? So these are the different garbage collector algorithms. What are they? Serial collector, parallel or throughput collector, CMS collector. CMS stands for concurrent mark and speed. G1GC means garbage first garbage collector. G1 garbage first garbage collector. Right? That is called also in short called as G1GC. Okay.
ఓకే కిషోర్, వన్ క్వశ్చన్. ఇప్పుడు ఈ గార్బేజ్ కలెక్టర్స్ అనే రియల్ టైంలో ఇప్పుడు మేము వర్క్ చేసే అప్లికేషన్స్లో ఎక్కడ ప్లేస్ అయి ఉంటాయి? ఇఫ్ అప్లికేషన్ వీఆర్ యూజింగ్ అంటే
see that in some configuration file. Okay, so you will see. Okay, let me show you some some screenshots. Okay, where you can see that like how can you check that how much memory is allocated at all, right? So
వెబ్టూర్స్ యూస్ చేసాము, దాంట్లో దానికి సంబంధించి
so Webtools is a Strawberry Perl application, right? So it's not a Java application, so you will not have that heap concept there.
Okay.
Heap concept, GC concept you will not hear, but this is this Monacat application is a Java application, so you will have that concept here. Okay, so you will have that GC this heap concept and GC concept over here, because this is a Java application. This application what I am showing you, this Monacat application, this is a Java. Here you can see enterprise Java e-commerce application. So this will definitely have like these concepts like heap, what is the heap size and what is the GC algorithm and all, that will be applicable for these Java applications. Okay. Right. So JMeter is using G1GC, right? JMeter is using G1GC, and if you observe here, see what the significance of G1GC is. We can define a max GC pass time. Means max GC pass millis is equal to 100 means whenever a GC happens, right, it should not pass for more than 100 milliseconds. That's what it means. Means 100 milliseconds kanna ekku iskokodu GC ani we are defining a limit on that, a threshold limit on that GC time, right? So this is the advantage that we get with G1GC. Okay, otherwise if garbage collection is taking 5 seconds or 10 seconds, right, your application will be hanging, it will not be responding for that 5 seconds or 10 seconds. Okay, the advantage with this G1GC is we can set a hard stop, or we can set a limit on that GC time. That is one of the advantages of this G1GC. Is it clear?
Yes.
Or no? Use this command, finding GC algorithm for command line. If you use this command ps-ef grep tomcat, it will show you the output will be something like this: initial heap size, max heap size, and use parallel GC. Means this application is using parallel GC. That's what we we will get this information if you use this command ps-ef grep tomcat. Right? First try this command and then you will get the user bin java print command line. Okay, user bin java print command line flags -version. So then you have to use this command, so then it will print like this. It will show the output like this: print command line flags -version. Okay, and if you simply use this command, right, you will see like how much the output will be something like this, right? So it will show you minimum heap memory, max heap memory, perm size, and all those details. But if you want to see like initial heap size, max heap, and if you want to see like which G1 garbage collection is being used, you have to use this command, this one. First you use this one, then like use this command to see this this algorithm that is being used, right? This algorithm is nothing but that garbage collection can happen in multiple ways, different ways, or different types. There are different types of garbage collection. What are those different types, guys?
CMS parallel collector,
Serial GC, parallel or throughput GC, throughput collector, CMS collector, concurrent mark and sweep. CMS stands for concurrent mark and sweep, and G1GC. There are many other, by the way, there are few other GC algorithms also, but these are the four important garbage collector algorithms. I think there are like some new garbage collection algorithms also introduced recently, but most of the applications are nowadays they are using G1GC, and if it is a desktop application, it uses serial GC. And a thick client application, if you have a thick client application, that uses serial GC, right? So you should know and remember what are the different types of garbage collection algorithms, right? These are the 4 different major types of garbage collection algorithms, right? And I told you, right, there is small change from Java 8 onwards. This PermGen is replaced by Metasploit. Shruti, are you able to follow, Shruti? Shruti, are you with us? Hello?
Hello. Yes, Kishore.
Able to follow? No. And if you see here, these are the different garbage collectors in different versions of Java, right? That means in Java 7, this is the default garbage collection. Parallel GC is the default garbage collection in Java 7 and Java 8. And in Java 9 version, like G1GC is the default garbage collector algorithm, right? And Java 9 and Java 10, G1GC is the default garbage collection algorithm. Means if you are using Java 9, right, by default it uses G1GC. If you are using Java 9, for this Monacat application, that means the underlying, the default garbage collection algorithm will be G1GC. So these are the default garbage collectors for each Java version, right? And here I explained what is serial collector. So basically, serial collector is used for single-threaded environment and optimized for client-server systems. Means thick client application. I mentioned, right? So serial collector is suitable for thick client applications, right? And I explained here what is serial collector, what is parallel collector, what is CMS collector, and how does they work, and what is CMS collector. You need not know all this, by the way, but you should at least remember the names. What are the different types of garbage collections you should remember, right? And what is the advantage and disadvantage of this, right? So G1GC is more introduced in JDK 7, and it was designed to support heaps larger than 4 GB. This is designed to support heaps larger than 4 GB, right? Means if your application requires like 4 GB of memory or more, 4 GB or more, then G1GC is the best GC algorithm to use, right? So, and when you are using G1GC, your heap architecture will be like this. It will not be like this anymore. Okay, your heap architecture will not be like this. But when you are using G1GC, your heap architecture will be like this. Your hidden space, E refers to hidden space, S refers to survivor space, and O refers to old generation. Right? So you need not draw this. No one will ask you this diagram also. But this diagram, like this heap architecture, they will ask. If someone is good in Java, right? If the interviewer is good in Java, like he will ask you to draw the heap architecture, Java heap architecture, and they will expect this one at least. You got it? They will expect that what is N generation, what is old generation, what is permanent generation. Okay. And G1. So let us understand G1GC. So G1GC is recommended for auto tuning capability. In G1GC, you can set the GC pass time goal, right? I explained this one, right? Max GC pass 200 means if you set like this, if your GC pass time is set like this, it won't allow your garbage collection to take more than 200 milliseconds. It won't allow, whenever GC happens, right? It will not allow like your GC time to be more than 200 milliseconds. Okay. So this is the soft goal which JVM will try its best to meet it. So what happens because of this, the response times will not go up drastically if you are limiting the GC pass time. Right? And this is about G1GC. This is the advantage of G1GC, and it is recommended for auto tuning capability. So and moreover, remember that this G1GC is suitable. It is best designed for heaps larger than 4 GB. When your application requires 4 GB or more memory, then this is the best garbage collection algorithm to use. This is the only one best garbage collection algorithm to use. And how to find GC in use, right? This is the command java-xx print command line flags -version. If you use this, like, you know, you will see which garbage collection is in use currently, right? Here you can see it is using parallel GC, right? Here you can see that, you know, it is using parallel GC. Okay, and suppose, you know, like, this is one of the interview questions, like how, which, you know, what is the what is the heap size of your application, means, or for your project or for your application, what is the heap memory, what are the heap memory settings, right? They can ask this. Or what is the GC algorithm that your application is using, you can ask this one also. So if you want to check, like, what is the GC algorithm that your application is using, you can use this command. Okay, you can log into the application server, and, you know, you can check over there. You can check, like, you know, you can use this command, you can check over there, right? And finding GC stats without any tool. So, you know, I gave for, you know, different operating systems like Ubuntu and Red Hat, this is the command. For Windows, this is the command. For Mac OS, this is the command to find out GC statistics, garbage collection statistics, right? These are the different commands that you can use in different operating systems. And if you don't have any, without any GC tool, yes, you can use this command java-xx print flags final version grep IE, and you can use this command and you will get the details like this. You see here what is the initial heap size. Initial heap size means minimum heap size, and this is the max heap size, right? This is the max heap size. Max heap size is, you know, maybe this is some 4 GB, right? So this command will show you, like, you know, the GC statistics, right? And if, you know, in Linux, yeah. So basically, like, you know, these are the important interview questions that you can expect for a performance test engineer. You know, let me list out some important, you know, interview questions that you can expect from Java concepts, right? The first important, you know, interview question is, what is meant by Java heaper? What is meant by Java heaper, right? So what is the answer? Like, heap is the
amount of memory
allocated for a Java application, right? The next question that you can expect is, what is GC, right? What is heap architecture? Immediately after Java heap, you know, can you explain, you know, Java heap architecture? So here you have to explain, you know, that there are different generations called, you know, N generation, full generation,
permanent,
and a permanent generation, right? Permanent or metaspace, right? So till Java 7 it is permanent generation. From Java 8 onwards, that is called as, renamed as metaspace. Okay? Metaspace, you know, it can important at the advantage of introducing metaspace, or the advantage of metaspace is, like, it can expand over runtime. Okay, the main difference is that metaspace can expand at runtime. So that is the advantage. That's why this metaspace was introduced from Java 8. So that is the advantage. You know, that is the difference between, you know, Java 7 and Java 8 versions. So next, you know, like, so you should be able to explain this, you know, draw this architecture diagram, Java heap architecture, either this one or this one, right? It is enough if you draw this diagram and, you know, explain what is N generation, old generation, how, you know, how the object life cycle will be, right? You should be able to explain this. First, all objects are created in hidden space, and GC triggered whenever hidden space fills up. You should be able to explain all this N generation and, you know, old generation and all, right? Whatever I covered now in this session, right? So the next important question is, what is garbage collection, right? Garbage collection is the process of, yes,
remove of extra objects.
Is the process
of
identifying unreachable objects, right? Objects, and, you know, and removing those unreachable objects, and or clearing the heap memory, or freeing of heap memory by removing those unreachable objects, unreferenced objects or unreachable objects. Unreferenced or unreachable objects. Okay.
Are not usable.
Which are not in use. Yes. And what is the next question? And what are the different? The next question can be what are the different?
GC.
What are the different GC algorithms? Right. And there are 4 major types of garbage collection algorithms, which are nothing but serial GC,
Parallel GC,
parallel GC or throughput collector, and GC or throughput collector. Third one is concurrent mark and sweep, CMS collector.
G1GC.
G1GC. Right? There are not only this. Please note that there are few other GC algorithms, but like these Java 10, Java 9 and 10. This is the default garbage collection algorithm. So there are few other GC algorithms. Okay. And how do you few other questions that they can ask is like what is heap memory for your application? What is heap memory allocated for your application? Okay. How much heap memory is allocated for your application that you are testing? You got it right? Application under test or whatever application that you are testing. And what is the GC algorithm that is you being used, right?
One more thing.
I already covered how to check this. I already covered how to check the heap memory and what is the GC algorithm that is being used. I already covered it over here, right? So these are the few important questions that you can expect. And apart from these, like few other questions that you can expect from an interviewer is like, did you identify any performance bottlenecks, or have you done any JVM tuning or Java tuning, right? Did you identify any performance bottlenecks for Java application, right? Or this is a general question, any performance bottlenecks that you identified, right? And how did you resolve them, right? So for which like I will be explaining some use cases in the next session. Okay.
One more, young generation, old generation, metaspace percentages.
Right. Yes. So that comes under Java heap architecture.
Okay.
So how much memory can be, how that total heap memory will be split between different partitions, right? That will come under here.
This is avoid.
Yeah. Generally, old generation will be more than young generation. So most of the cases, generally, this it will be in this ratio 1:2:1. Okay. The memory will be allocated in 1:2:1 ratio. Means like one for young generation, two parts are two for old generation, and then again like if it is 1 GB, I explained it here.
Yes.
If the total amount of memory is allocated is 1 GB, that will be split like this: young generation 256 MB for young generation, 512 MB for old generation, and another 256 MB for firm generation or metaspace. And this is how your memory will be, your heap memory will be allocated. This will be done automatically, but it will be done in this ratio. Okay, so thanks for watching, and like, share, subscribe to my YouTube channel.